So our next speaker is Dr. Sung Jin, and he is the principal scientist for a group called the Advanced Environmental Technologies. It's a private company here in Fort Collins. Dr. Jin is also an adjunct professor at the University of Wyoming and a visiting professor at Peking University. He received his PhD from University of Wyoming. He holds 27 patents, and we're looking forward to your presentation today. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Reagan, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have this opportunity here. Thanks for the invitation. And it's kind of funny. I live and work in Fort Collins, but I don't have any relationship with CSU. My lab is at the University of Wyoming, and I also work with some colleagues in China, but I have never worked with anybody from Hunan University. So this is a great opportunity. It's a good start. And today I'll be talking about present environmental market in China. And this is based on my personal experience. I've been doing environmental remediation for the past 20 years or so, and also spent a few years in China by working with China University of Geosciences and Beijing University. So from my work and my travel, my meetings, I think I put together this talk to share with my colleagues here in CSU and Hunan University about environmental remediation. And first of all, I'd like to thank my contributors, Dr. Charlie Wang and Vincent Deren. These both are from companies, remediation companies in China, and my colleague, Paul Fogren, and for their contribution to the data in here. And the subjects I want to touch, one is when I was trying to put this together, the first question I'd ask myself is, we all know the environmental problems in China. You see smog, and that's the most eye-catching pictures. And but is there a market? And so that's something I want to talk about. So I call that emerging environmental market. And also it's the business model. Dr. Kong mentioned a little bit about different cultures. So business also has its own culture. And the protocols are different, and I'm very familiar with what's been done here, and I'm learning on how to do business in China, even as a Chinese, so that's kind of funny. And then the case studies, I want to use one case study to give you a description on the procedures of doing environmental projects. So these are familiar pictures we just saw from the previous talks, and is there a market? After I finish this talk, and the answer to myself is a solid yes. And we have, because of air, surface water, and soil pollution and the problems, this has been well published, well disclosed by social media. So this is even, for the government, sometimes you have this confidentiality issue, but because of the social media and the modern telecommunication, everybody knows there are big problems for air, surface water, and soil, and what's missing here is groundwater. And that could be a bigger problem in China. And I quoted two sources in here, one from an American consulting firm. 57% of groundwater nationwide is considered poor. And because there's no rigid standard in here to categorize that. 97% of groundwater in urban areas are contaminated. So this is from it's a minister from Ministry of Land and Resources. So that's public information. So the ongoing remediation effort in China, you have this pollution in soil and in surface water, and we have an industry that's coming up in China. And so far, that's my observation. There are a couple of major soil remediation projects in China to start with, but at this time, they're mostly driven by real estate development. So it's called urbanization. That's the whole campaign for the country to lift a lot of poor populations from rural area to the cities. And because of that, cities are expanding, and then you have a lot of house needs, you have shopping centers to be built. So local governments are moving a lot of polluting industries out of the city And then so you can exchange that land to build residential areas. And because they are mostly contaminated, so you need to clean it. But here, the driver is not really a policy driver. It is more a commercial driver. And this is exciting. The Water Pollution Prevention Action Plan and Soil Pollution Prevention Plan. And they're abbreviated into, we call that Water 10 or Soil 10. These are two laws that the drafts have been reviewed and approved and will be implemented. So with this two, this is equivalent to Clean Water Act and Clean Air Act. Well, there's a soil law here too, and in the United States. And with that, we're expecting the remediation will shift from the real estate development to policy compliance. So with that, it's, it's comparable. So the market in China and remediation in the United States, you can really compare them apple to apple. Green GDP, that's another thing, because in previous years, the Chinese municipalities are evaluated, especially those leaders, are evaluated based on how much money, how much a GDP you can generate during your term of service. So, and the environmental work, or that's considered, that's not included in the GDP calculation. And because of that, there's no incentive for the administrators to do any environmental cleanup. And now we have a green GDP term, so it could be an industry by itself. And then if you can make the environment cleaner, that's counted towards your performance evaluation. So that there's an incentive in here for the local municipalities to clean up the pollution to make the environment better. And with all these laws and the shift in government policy, it is expected that we have about $150 billion of marketing here. So it's a B, and this is the starting point. I think it's an underestimate of the total environmental market in China. Well, with that pollution and with the market, well, how do we clean it? We need some technical guidance. And I listed a few here. And these are some environmental guidelines. It's mostly adopted from US EPA and from EU, even from Japan, from their guidelines. So it's pretty vague. So it's still in the developing phase. It's very general. There's no specifics to follow. And then let's get down to business. It's even it's very unique in China from my personal experience in environmental consulting. When you're talking about environmental consulting in China, people ask you, what do you do? I said, well, I try to cure the disease of Mother Nature. And then I'm a consultant. So, well, what do you have? I said, well, I have technologies, I have methods, I have ideas, designs, how to clean soil pollution. Well, what do you sell? Well, that's what I sell. I sell my brain. I sell my ideas. And no, we need machinery. We need hardware. How you guys got tools? And so that's more acceptable than the consulting business model, because
especially difficult in China.
Right. Yeah.
So here people would like to say buy your brand, buy your idea, and the consulting is kind of common service provided. But in China, people just don't believe you can sell your brand.
Well, and also there's a negative term for that. It's if you're a consulting firm, if you only have a few people, sometimes you're considered as a suitcase company. So that means you got nothing to sell. You're just a crook. You're just trying to sell snake oil. And but it's changing. And but we know all these multinational consulting companies here. That's what they do. If you ask them, what product are you selling? I'm not selling anything, but I'm trying to sell the solution to you. So that's something to keep in mind. And so there's a misconception there. And then the solution is, if you package your software with hardware, it's much easier for people to accept. So it's more a package you're delivering to your client. So for technology know-how and patents, you better attach that to some kind of products too to realize its commercial value. And this is, I'm not expecting you to go through each one. Just want to show you, this is a typical project flowchart. And those major projects, they are usually going through a bidding process. It's very standardized, and it's very stringent, but it's also very complicated. And it's similar to the processing here. Of course, you buy the bidding documents, and then you prepare your bid and stuff like that. But for Chinese environmental projects, so far, you have a couple of unique features. First of all, there is a pilot stage in there, and the project owner wouldn't pay you for doing that. So you have a couple of bidders to bid for a project, and then you're supposed to, you're selected, you go to the site, you present your technology, you do your work. Majority of that will not be paid. Only the winner will be partially reimbursed. So that's a big burden to anybody who wants to bid major projects in China. And the other thing is the post-project liability issue. So if you are a consultant and you finish the project, a few years after the project completion, if something's wrong, it's not your fault, but you're still liable. So you need to be big enough to handle that liability. And I think the insurance policies might be involved too to solve that problem. And along with that, so the project execution and site closure, it's pretty complicated. You have multiple steps to do. And in relatively speaking, the procedures here, even we're also dealing with regulatory agencies, but it's much simpler. The companies, the major players in China doing environmental remediation work, they're mostly state-owned companies and also some large stock-listed companies, public companies. Public companies in China is different from US public companies. And for you to be listed, you have to be big enough. You have to, so that stock listing is a status, then a category. So for those major guys to do that, and there's a requirement for all sorts of certificates. I just listed a few from a company I collaborated with. This is from Jiangsu province called a DDBS, DDBC or DDBS. You have to have business registration, of course, but you have to have credentials from engineering design all the way to the OSHA compliance. Okay, now I'm going to shift to a case study. This is done by that company, DDBS. It's a project in eastern China, and this is a former chemical plant. So the soil is contaminated with both petroleum hydrocarbon and metals. So here it is. So we have, this is the benzene category, BTEX, benzene, toluene, xylene, and ethylbenzene. Chrome, so that's metals. So you have these two contaminants in the soil. And the area of contamination is about 50,000 square meters. So it's quite a large site. The quality standard for compliance, we're using, this is GB is Chinese national standard, and I don't know what HJ stands for, but this is all local standards for metals and for soil quality. They're pretty general. They're not to individuals, but it does cover these constituents like benzene, toluene, and metals. Remediation design. It's not by consultant. That's another difference from the system here. It's by the project owner. So the project owner will hire their own consultant, which is called, most of the time it's called environmental research institutes. These guys are usually affiliated with municipality EPAs. So they're semi-government. And from what I heard, by the end of this year, that has to be cut clear. So you're either you're business or you're government. You cannot be both. At this time, it's both. So that institute will design what's to be done. So in this case, they picked as soil vapor extraction and the solidification, that's physical, and also some chemical methods to treat chrome-6 and to treat toluene and xylene. You can see the activities in here. So excavation, and then this is surface soil treatment. I listed a few milestones here. And then one thing I want to stress is if you see the time they start, DDBS is October 18th, 2011. As I said, they started with a pilot test. So you spend a month or so on site to do the pilot to show the project owner you have the right technology implementation, because technology is already picked by the project owner. And so you win the bid. So you're gonna do that project. But from that time, October 18th to August 24th, 2012, it's just within like half a year or so time, you have to finish the whole project from beginning to the end, including the pilot test. So that's a very typical time requirement for major environmental projects in China. So what does that give the practitioners, to engineering firms like us, people who use technologies? That means the most sustainable technology, biological method, cannot be used. It's too slow. So you have to go with physical, chemical, thermal, and all these aggressive technologies to treat that. I hope that's going to change with the policy-driven environmental remediation. But this is, as I said, for real estate development. I need this land within 8 months. So you only have 8 months. You got to clean it. So with that, the opportunities, yes, it is there, and it's already ongoing, and it's only expected to be expanded during the next few years because of this water law, water 10 and soil 10. And also there's another big, to us it's a treasure box. I guess to the government it's a Pandora box, it's groundwater. So when the groundwater quality data is disclosed, you have almost 80% of the national groundwater to be cleaned. And that market size will be probably soil plus air plus everything altogether. For international companies, like for CSU or for any American companies, first mover advantage still applies. Technology, that's the stronghold. Because the local remediation companies, they're relying on a few kind of a default technologies, mostly chemical oxidation and some physical removal as technologies to do the remediation. But in the meantime, we have the challenges. As for an American company or any other Western companies to go in, the bidding process is very confusing. It's not transparent. And then in addition to that, the fixed cost and this performance guarantee thing will add a big load to anybody who wants to bid for the project. So you can't really do that. You have to rely on local companies to do that. And then the third thing is lack of complete site assessments. Because usually when project owner hires those research institutes to do the investigation, you don't have a complete picture of the site. You don't know the details of the contaminants. The last thing is IP concerns, because a lot of technology companies, that's their lifeline. So, and if you're working with a local company and in China, and you need to protect that IP through some legal venues. So here comes the strategies. And the advantages for any multinational companies, mostly it's technology. It is not your network. You have no network in there. And it's not your strength. You don't have the financial strength to take the project that way with the performance guarantee and with the liability. So the local presence is essential, and the local partner is essential. Patents, contracts, all these legal due diligence have to be done completely to make sure that you can do more than one project instead of you do one and then you lose it all. So with that, I want to conclude my talk, and I'll be open to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jen. Let's thank him, please, everyone.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a break. Let's see. Is there a question for Dr. Jen? On it. So I'm curious. It sounds like most of your technology that you're working on is soil-based remediation. Do you have technology for groundwater remediation that you've already developed and is ready to go?
It actually is mostly for groundwater. Yeah, but you know, the reason I was talking about soil is you know, this topic is related to China, and it's mostly soil remediation. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, yes, please.
Yes.
That's approved by the Ministry of Environment Protection in China.
环境. Oh yeah, environment. Yeah, probably. I'm not familiar with that.
The level of the standard,
Right.
you know, the coalition standard level, that's the GB.
Uh-huh.
At the beginning, as the, you know, then sometimes that's for different ministry, they issues some of the, you know, the guidelines and standards that such kind that's approved by the Ministry of Environment
Okay.
Protection.
EPA.
And I forget, was that the Chromium 6 standard? I forget which one that
Yeah,
was.
that's it. And I think it will be changed. I heard that the EPA, Chinese EPA, and they have a research institute. They're putting together a newer guideline to be more specific on different constituents. Because at this time it's pretty general, and a lot of trace elements, even they're carcinogenic and toxic, they're not included. So, all right.
Good. So thank you very much, Dr. Jen. Thanks to all the speakers in the first session.